Hi, my name is Timothy van Herbee. I am the CEO of Triangle Factory, a game developer based in Belgium. We are the developers behind Hyperdash, a fast-paced VR multiplayer arena shooter that we recently launched onto multiple platforms, including Viveport. I'm here to talk about how we went from the original idea to the actual concept, working out an alpha version, testing out that alpha version, and then eventually launching our product onto the market. But first, to give you an idea what the game is all about, here is a short trailer from Hyperdash.
Welcome to Hyperdash.
So welcome to my presentation about Hyperdash and how we wanted to bring the arena first-person shooter genre to virtual reality. To give you a bit of a background about Triangle Factory, as mentioned, we are a VR-focused game developer. Around 90% of our revenue is actually coming from virtual reality. The company was founded in 2010. We are based in Ghent, Belgium, and we are currently with a team of around 25 people. As a company, we focus into three different verticals. The first one being in-home entertainment, a second one being location-based entertainment, and then a third vertical, enterprise, where we build enterprise solutions using virtual reality. Today, I will mostly be covering the in-home entertainment vertical. To give you an idea about our location-based entertainment work, we've built multiple free roam experiences, both co-op and player versus player, for up to 16 players using HTC Vive Pros and room scale Vive tracking up to 200 square meters. If you want more information about this, you can always visit theparkplayground.com to get an idea of what kind of experiences that we've built for location-based VR. But today I will be covering Hyperdash, a cross-platform multiplayer VR first-person shooter that can be played with up to 10 people online in a 5 versus 5 setup. The game was launched about 3 months ago and has been very well received by the community. I will be covering how we went from the original idea to the actual concept, working out a prototype, moving that prototype into a vertical slice and launching an alpha version of the game, getting all the feedback from the community, implementing that feedback into the final product that we've launched this year on Viveport. Looking at the inspiration for Hyperdash, we can definitely say that games like Team Fortress 2, Unreal Tournament, Quake 3 Arena were a big inspiration for the game. A lot of people at Triangle Factory grew up playing these games, and we felt that virtual reality didn't really have this type of game yet. We felt that there was kind of a gap in the market, that we were able to build something that was kind of new and it wasn't being done before in virtual reality. So we started off by setting some basic requirements for the game. First of all, it was an arena-based shooter, so we wanted the game to be very fast-paced. We also wanted to make sure that people didn't really have to wait after they died to start playing again. So we made sure that people respawn after they die, and so we also needed to make sure that people were able to traverse the levels rather quickly. So we needed a movement system that was fast as well. We also wanted the game to be easy to learn. We wanted new players to be able to pick up the game rather quickly and would be able to play the game in a matter of minutes. But we also want to make sure that people who've been playing the game for longer still had a fun time learning the ins and outs of the game. So the game also needed to be hard to master. Then what was also very crucial to us was the fact that you needed to be able to play the game in home, when in small spaces. We kind of wanted to build a game in that way that people who have a big space to play didn't necessarily have an advantage over people with a smaller space to play in. We just realized that a lot of people don't really have a lot of space to play VR games, and we didn't want to make a game where that space had a big impact on the advantages that you have playing against other people. Then secondly, we also wanted the game to support multiple game modes. We also wanted to focus on one-handed weapons because we kind of wanted to make full use of the controllers that most VR headsets have. We also don't really feel like two-handed weapons work very well in VR, and that we kind of wanted to make full use of those two separate controllers. Then last but not least, we also wanted to make sure that the game was hitting high frame rates and that we didn't have any motion sickness when playing the game. High frame rates and performance were also very important because of the fact that we wanted to launch the game on mobile headsets as well. The game has a lot of esports potential, so we wanted to make sure that performance and high frame rate was one of our priorities. Using these requirements, we've worked out our first concept called Triple Dash. Triple Dash already had the basics of Hyper Dash in it. It had the way of traversing the level by using a teleportation or a dashing mechanic, and players would have a limited amount of dashes, in this case 3 dashes, that would recharge over time. The dash mechanic actually added a very strategic element to the game. It allowed people, first of all, to move very quickly across large distances of a level, but it also required people to think very strategically on how and when they were going to use their dashes. After working out the concept, we knew that we needed a prototype to make sure that we had a fun idea. So we set out with some basic requirements for a prototype. First of all, we wanted basic networking to be in there so we could test out the multiplayer experience of the game. We wanted basic movement to be in there, some basic weapon mechanics, and we wanted to focus on one game mode. The main goal of this prototype was to make sure that we had a fun game. We wanted to make sure that we have a prototype that we could play test with people and make sure that people were enjoying themselves while playing this. Graphics or anything else were basically not important during this prototyping phase. We just wanted to make sure that gameplay was our main priority while developing this concept. You can see a screenshot of the early prototype for HyperDash. As you can see, graphics were totally not important as we were fully focused on making sure the game was fun to play. After validating the prototype with a test audience, we knew that we had a very fun concept in our hands. We also knew that the prototype probably wasn't enough to convince publishers, platform holders, or investors with our idea. So we started out building a vertical slice of the game. A vertical slice is something that shows the full game but only limits itself to maybe one level or one game mode. So we started working on a vertical slice that would show the full art style and the full concept of HyperDash, but we would still focus on this one game mode and one level of the game. Here you can see some of the early designs of the robot or player character of the game, and also some early designs of the level design that we were working out, or the block out of the level that we finally chose. We chose Control Point for this, as it was also the game mode that we used for our prototype and that we knew that people already enjoyed. You can see that we're already applying an art style to this level, already trying to bring across the art style that we want to apply in the game. As you can see, it has a very esports kind of feel. This isn't the actual final art style. This was the art style that we used for the vertical slice, but it was already a big step towards that final art style that we eventually chose to apply on the whole game. Here you can see some of the weapon designs that we designed for the game. Not all of them eventually ended up in the game. It's just working out different kinds of ideas. And you definitely notice that we try to use one-handed weapons as much as possible. Of course, we want all types of weapons in there, ranging from rocket launchers to shotguns, but we all designed them in that way that they can be used as a one-handed weapon. After finalizing the player character concept for Hyperdash, we eventually translated this player character concept into an actual 3D model. And this 3D model is actually the model that's still being used in the final product today. After finishing the vertical slice, we finally had a product that showed the final gameplay and art style of the game. Of course, we wanted as much feedback as possible, so we decided on releasing this as an alpha version onto different channels, including Discord, Reddit, UploadVR, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. The final version of this vertical slice was launched with an announcement trailer, which I will shortly show to let you see how the vertical slice was already very closely resembling the final product of the game.
Welcome to Hyperdash. Prepare to start.
During this alpha launch, we were able to gather a lot of interesting information and feedback from our community, and we were also able to validate through the use of analytics that there was a big demand for this type of game among VR players. Now that we knew that there was a market fit for the game, we wanted to move from a vertical slice towards the final product. We did this by applying monthly updates on our alpha version and making sure that we constantly had feedback from our community when we were adding new features and content to the game. Here you can see some of the concept art for the levels that we had in mind for the game, and it kind of shows the art style and the art that we wanted to apply to all of our levels when moving from the vertical slice towards the final product of the game. During the alpha version of our game, we mostly used blockouts for our levels so that we could focus on the gameplay, the level design, and the balancing of our multiplayer maps. This was, of course, crucial for a multiplayer game like Hyperdash. During those final stages of production, we, of course, still needed to apply the actual concept on these different blockouts. We also finalized the art style of the weapons as well. During the final stages of production, we also wanted to continue to listen to our community and implement important features that were in high demand by our players. One of these features was the spectator mode, which allowed players to actually jump in with a PC client to spectate a multiplayer match and stream this towards different platforms. I think this was a very important feature as the game was already showing a lot of esports potential, and we wanted to make sure that players had an easy way of streaming their matches towards different platforms. As we entered the final stage of production, we ended up with a final release candidate for Hyperdash. Being a multiplayer game, we wanted to make sure that we had a large enough player base when we launched the game, and so we went out to port the game to as many platforms as possible, including Vive Focus 3. As the game was already built with mobile VR in mind, the implementation of the Vive Wave XR SDK was very straightforward. I want to add that if you're using Unity, it is best to use the new Unity XR system as it works best with the new Vive Wave XR plugin. I would also recommend creating separate branches of your codebase for each platform that you want to support. On the 25th of February this year, we eventually launched the final version of Hyperdash onto different platforms, including Viveport, Oculus, and Steam. The game was very well received by the community with a 4.7 user score, and after 2 months, the game was already downloaded more than 50,000 times. So what are the key takeaways of this session? I would say, first of all, if you have a concept or idea for a VR game, make sure to test this out, prototype it, and reiterate over your prototype, making sure that you prioritize fun and gameplay before anything else like art or graphics. Also, if you're launching a multiplayer game, make sure to launch an alpha version or beta version so that people and the community can test out your game, so that you can test out the code base of your networking, and that you can also get feedback from the community as fast as possible. So get the word out, build up a community, listen to your community, and something that helped us as well was building up to these monthly updates so that the community was always interested in being able to look out for something new. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for listening, and I also want to thank HTC for supporting us during the development of Hyperdash and giving me the opportunity to speak at this conference. Thank you very much.